If the St. Louis Cardinals are going to compete in 2025, then there are two guys that are certainly going to need to step up their game. We're going to talk about them and how new hitting coach Brant Brown has already reached out to these individuals on Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals fans. I'm JD Hafford, and I'm your host for Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can follow me on Twitter X at JD Sports Radio and the podcast at LO_Cardinals. We want to thank those of you who make Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, also available on YouTube. We continue to make that push for 11,000 subscribers. Last check, 13. Lucky 13 short. Before we started this. So just a couple of more, guys. If you haven't stopped by yet, please do like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you know when the new episodes are posted, because this is a show serving Cardinal Nation and giving the best fans in baseball all of the info about the birds on the bat. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, joined by our good friend Thomas Gauvain from RedbirdRants.com. You can follow him at Thomas Gauvain on Twitter X, and obviously all of his write-ups available at RedbirdRants.com. Christmas movies yet, Thomas? Have you been forced to sit down and watch any? Because we had a 4 Christmases party this past weekend with some friends, which was a lot of fun. What about you?
There you go. Yeah, we've got a couple of them. I'm more of a classic, like the claymation ones. I enjoy those. So we watched Frosty the Snowman, like the 1970s version of it. So I enjoy those.
I guess there's a difference because you got kids, so you're probably watching them with the whole family there, where we're sitting here watching. It's just a bunch of couples that don't have any children. So language, we don't care. It doesn't matter. We've got beverages going. We were eating like the cheese on the cracker as the hors d'oeuvres, things like she does in the movie and stuff. We had wings. We had Taboo going on. So we did the whole spiel. But Four Christmases, I feel, is like very underrated film when it comes to Christmas movies. But anyhow, on to some baseball chat today. Brant Brown is the new hitting coach for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was unceremoniously fired from the Mariners this past year after really not a whole lot of time with the organization. Apparently things just did not mesh well. The way that he was teaching, from what I've read, just didn't mesh well with some of the players. And so they got him out of there. He was the offensive coordinator with the Seattle Mariners, not just the hitting coach. So he had a whole lot going on his plate there. But had stints with the Marlins, before that with the Dodgers. And everybody is kind of curious what Brant Brown is going to bring to this team to turn things around from what we saw in 2024, where, 1 year it's the offense is great. The next year the offense goes down and the pitching is much better. It's this roller coaster for the Cardinals right now, and they can't seem to get everything on the same page. And we've been waiting to hear what Brant Brown is going to do to help turn things around. And we got a report from John Denton at MLB.com, who gave us some insight as to what Brant Brown has been doing already. If you want to enlighten us on what is the latest with Brant Brown and what he's been doing.
Yeah, it was a great piece by Denton. He got one-on-one with Brant Brown, and they were talking about what he's already done so far within just the first month of his time with the Cardinals. And he's reached out to two, probably the most important hitters for the Cardinals next year, and Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker. He and Gorman actually live close to each other out in Arizona near Scottsdale. And they've already made plans to get together, look at Gorman's swing path, and look at some film from last year. And then he intends on meeting with Jordan Walker sometime in December as well to touch base down in Florida. So I think him reaching out to those two hitters, it shows the fans that Brant Brown knows how important these guys are to the team and their future. But then it also shows his willingness to work quickly and to jump into things too with these guys.
Yeah, and that's something that I think will be important to Cardinal fans, because even though it's the off season, and I know we think nothing is happening, like it's just people sitting around in offices just chilling. The guys are just, they're lifting weights and doing whatever. That's not really the case. Baseball has become a 12-month type of thing for these guys. And it's important to get these guys going, because when we're talking about younger players and we're going to rely on them, we're going to let them play, and we're going to let them do what they need to do and get their swings and going, and the young pitchers to get more innings and whatnot, because we want to learn what we've got instead of just going out and picking off veterans and paying ridiculous amounts for them anymore. They're going to switch in this new direction. And like you mentioned, Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman are as important as anybody in this lineup for next year. Wilson Contreras obviously is going to be a huge piece there in the middle. We don't know if Nolan Arenado is going to be around anymore, but those two guys are kind of the future of this team, along with Masyn Winn. And if they're going to do anything over the next few years, those guys have to be like meat of the order type of guys. I'm not talking hitting 6 and 7 in the lineup. I'm talking about these guys got to be, 2 through 5 type of guys that are huge for this lineup.
Yeah, and the fact that Gorman didn't have his power last year that we expected, his strikeouts were ridiculous. Jordan Walker couldn't get the ball in the air. I think his line drive percentage was like 8% last year in the majors, which was ridiculous. Hopefully Brown can figure out how to limit Gorman's whiff rates and strikeout rates and elevate the ball for Jordan Walker, whatever it may be. But those two guys are so important for the lineup. We know what Wilson Contreras is going to do. We have an idea of what Masyn Winn is going to do at this point. Same with Brendan Donovan. But we need those two guys, as you said, to be heart of the order bats to really carry the offense.
You want to mix them in, because if there is an Arenado around this team next year, I'm still not anti. I'm not actively trying to get rid of these dudes all the time. Like, I think it would be great to see Nolan Arenado in this lineup again next year. And if you can get, more production from Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman the way you thought you were going to get this past year, then this lineup does become pretty darn dangerous. I mean, you're really subtracting the Paul Goldschmidt aspect of this. But if you look at what he had done the last couple of years, it's not all that much that you're trying to replace. Yeah. And you've got a Brendan Donovan. You're hoping for a healthy Lars Nootbaar and more production from a guy like a Masyn Winn next year, who had a monster year. Going through this article with John Denton, some of the quotes with Brant Brown, I just want to give a couple of them here because, people are worried that, like, all right, he got fired in Seattle like just a few months into this thing. Like, what's wrong with him? Why was he out of there and he wasn't good enough for a lineup who wasn't any good either? Why is he going to turn things around for the Cardinals? And, one of the things, as I mentioned, was like maybe he just wasn't a good fit with that certain grouping of players. He talks about how he's a very focused individual, and he says sometimes that's a gift and a curse. He says he knows that about himself, that focus is a way you can earn some respect with hitters, because they know that I've got their back. They know that I'm going to give them a pat when they need it, and I'm going to tell them the truth when they need the truth. And, sometimes younger players get coddled a little bit, Thomas. Yes. And sometimes, as a parent, this, there's some times where you need to be like, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to be fine. There's other times where tough love needs to be put in there, because they've got to learn one way or another the way to do things. And it sounds like Brant Brown's going to be proactive on how he needs to react to how these certain players are going to be, instead of just being one way the whole time.
Yeah, and I think it was Derek Gould. He asked a question about Brant Brown, and John Mozeliak said he's a good combination of Turner Ward and Jeff Albert, between like the analytics and the dealing with players. He seems to be a good mix of the two. He's going to be aware of the analytics and the swing paths and all those things that people can get into or not get into. But then he's also going to know how to talk to players, and that's something that could be important, especially for the young guys, figuring out where they fit, what they need to do, and just giving them the honest truth from time to time too.
And I've spoken with our buddies over at Locked On Mariners, and they told me that they think he would have been a great hitting coach, and they think there was just a little too much that he was going with as this offensive coordinator, where he was just like getting pulled in all sorts of different directions. And they were like, it's not so much that he was like a bad guy or a bad coach or anything. They're like, I think there was just too much for him to try to work on. And if he had just been able to focus as just like a hitting coach, which he will be for the Cardinals, they thought things would have gone much, much smoother for Brant Brown with Seattle. So positive things with Brant Brown, and talking with two of those big names with Gorman and Walker, because they're going to need them in 2025. And you and I both have said to each other before, like, we believe in these guys. Like, the pedigree's there, the talent is there. Just got to kind of reel it in and, get it to produce at the major league level, because we've seen them be able to do it in the minor leagues. This offseason has been littered with trade thoughts, ideas, and a different direction is something that you brought up. What about extensions? We'll discuss that next on Locked On Cardinals. There's not a whole lot of things better than going to a live sporting event, whether it's, sports that are in season right now, like basketball or hockey, football, of course, baseball during the summertime. And with the Gametime app, you're going to be able to find tickets to all of your favorite sporting events, whether it's going to a Blues game, SLU basketball, Mizzou basketball and football, Southern Illinois sports, the St. Louis Ambush. You want to go to All Elite Wrestling in December? They've got your tickets for that as well. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. They'll give you the views from your seat, which is always really nice, because sometimes you're like, where exactly? Am I behind that pole? No, you don't want that ticket. You want to switch out to go to a different view. They got it for you there, and you've got their lowest price guarantee. Gametime will take the guesswork out of buying tickets for all your favorite sporting events, as well as concerts, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. Was talking with Thomas just moments ago about going to a Christmas Carol with the wife. She brought up going to the theater, and I was like, hold on, let's go look at tickets. Popped onto the Gametime app to see what we could find. So Gametime app, it's perfect for all of the any of your ticket needs. Let's just be honest. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase, which goes a long way when we're talking about certain events. Terms apply. Again, to create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. Leave your comments on YouTube as well as on Twitter X anytime you want. That feedback is always welcome and encouraged. Thomas Gauvain joining us from redbirdrants.com. You can also follow him on Twitter X at Thomas Gauvain. Trading Nolan Arenado, Contreras, Gray, Helsley. Thomas, we've been hearing about it ever since the reset press conference was done. And, it really threw a lot of Cardinals minds, like the fans, into a blender, because first off, we're not used to talk like that, where we're trying to get rid of people. And that doesn't have to be the way that it is. That what they've decided to do is, talk to these veteran guys with the no trade clauses, look, be honest with them, say, here's where we're going with things. And if you want to be a part of it, cool. If not, we'll do what we can to move on from this and get you to a better spot. And it doesn't hurt the Cardinals because they're shedding some payroll at the same time, which is something that they wanted to do this offseason. But your mind ended up spinning in a different direction. You're like, instead of thinking about trades, and subtracting, you're talking about locking people up with extensions instead. You're thinking outside the box, Thomas, which is why we love you. So,
thank you.
Who are some of these guys that you're thinking about? All right, instead of trading, we'll extend them. Who are some of the guys on your list here that you think the Cardinals should reach out to about something like this?
There are two guys in two very different spots, too. One was Ryan Helsley. Derek Gould brought it up in one of his chats, and then our site editor, Josh Jacobs, wrote a proposal for an extension. We've talked about this before. Ryan Helsley is the pitcher that the Cardinals have wanted and needed for years. He's homegrown. He's talented. He's high leverage. He's good. And trading him would stink. But signing him to extension might be beneficial for both parties. Josh proposed, let me see what he's got here. He has a 5-year deal worth $75 million. It goes up starting at $12 million this upcoming year, and then going all the way up to a $17 million mutual option in 2030. That'd be the 6th year of his contract. I think that's good for both teams. Cardinals get a little bit of a discount towards the end of his contract. They also have the chance to then turn him into a starting pitcher, which is something that he was in the minors, and some people have even pushed now. I don't think it makes sense to do starter this offseason, but in the future, if they lock him up for many years, that could be good. And then I was looking at one for Masyn Winn on the other side of the spectrum. He's got 5 more years of team control. But I think something the Cardinals have lacked for a long time is a long-term homegrown guy, like Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina level. Those two guys brought fans to the stadium. There were jerseys everywhere you went in St. Louis with their names on them. We need another cornerstone long-term player, and I think Masyn Winn could be that. Giving him a contract extension and predicting what it might be is tough because he's so young. There's so few people who have done it. I looked at an 8-year, $100 million contract that gets him as a free agent when he's 30 or 31. So we could still get one big deal after that, 6-7 years, which might be intriguing to him. He gets paid a lot more for these next 4 years during arbitration. But then we get a discount on the back end that would be less than market value and what would be his free agent years. So Helsley and Masyn Winn extensions would be my preference, I think.
Now you bring up the starting pitching thing with Ryan Helsley. Are we not past that? Like, I mean, he's 30. He was just NL. He was just the NL's best relief pitcher. Like, why would we? And this is just me being the other side of things. Like, why would we want to toy with a guy who's already at the top of his game? Like, why would we even consider that?
Don't you know Mozeliak loves 30-year-old starting pitcher? No, I think there's obviously more value in starters. They get more innings. They get more time out there. They have a greater effect on it. It's just something to throw around. I don't think it's necessarily something that needs to happen. He's a very, very good reliever, top of the game. Yeah. It'd be great if he stays in there. But if we can get a little bit more out of him as a starting pitcher, I think that's a nice route.
Man, I would be shocked if something like that happened. I would be like, wait, what? Like,
relievers probably where stays.
Did we learn anything from the Jordan Hicks situation where it was back and forth and we're trying to do it with Matthew Liberatore and Zach Thompson? Now we want to do it with Ryan Helsley? No, I am anti that whole idea. The extension thing, gosh, do you think he'd be up for something like that? Just considering that he's 1 year away from really cashing in? I mean, I guess if he loves it in St. Louis, I guess that's where he wants to be. I guess, some people will take a discount to stay in certain places, but I don't know. If I'm Ryan Helsley, I'm kind of like, I'm 1 year away from really hitting that jackpot, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think he'd probably hold off. He would probably beat out Raisel Iglesias' free agent contract. I don't think he'd get numbers like Edwin Diaz or Josh Hader. He could probably beat out Emmanuel Clase's extension that he got too. So there's a lot of money that he could get from this, and it'd be coming quicker than if he waited for free agency. But like you said, he's 1 year away. He's probably in no rush to sign an extension.
Yeah, I mean, I get that there's always that, because he's dealt with injuries over his career, but, there's always that chance that something bad goes. So you get an opportunity to sign something long and something that's, obviously contract fully paid and guaranteed. Hard to turn it down, but I don't know.
$75 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of dough, bro. Yeah. That's a lot of dough. It'd be hard to turn down if I'm him as well. So I see why it would be food for thought. That's for sure. As far as the Masyn Winn thing goes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you see what like Milwaukee did with Churio. Yeah. I love that. And I said something about this in yesterday's episode, talking about some of the surprises from last season and the way that Masyn Winn kind of took over as the face of the franchise. I thought was a big surprise last year. I think we thought he would be good. Did I think he was going to be a Gold Glove caliber shortstop? No, I didn't think he was going to be there yet. Did I think he was going to get hit 15 home runs and be this guy that ended up, like you said, you want a guy that where kids are buying his jerseys and stuff, and you want this face of the franchise type of guy, and it's great when they're homegrown talent. Arenado and Goldschmidt, obviously a part of an older era, and who's that next torch going to? I think we thought it was going to be Jordan Walker, but things didn't work out this past year, and it ended up being Masyn Winn who slid into that spot. Got a cool look about him. It's got the cool arm. There's not a lot to dislike about it, and the maturity level that he shows at such a young age already. I mean, if you're gonna back a guy and give him 10 years on this team, that's the guy. I'm completely with you on that. If they are interested and Masyn Winn's like, yeah, this sounds good, I'm cool with that. I'm absolutely on board with that.
And he had the offense last year too. I mean, I think people saw him as an average offensive player with plus defense. He had the defense, and his offense was actually a little bit surprising. I think he had like a 106 OPS plus, so 6% better than the average hitter. That's good. Like from a shortstop, especially, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And we're talking about a guy who at the end of the year got exhausted, because he was playing every day. Remember how everybody was giving the Cardinals crap for resting him here and there? And Brandon Crawford would get like one start and what are we doing? What is this? Because the dude is young and he's never played this much baseball ever in his entire life. And you saw what happened at the end of the year. He was worn down, and you saw his numbers take a big dip at the end of the season. So that's what they were trying to avoid. But, you won't hear those guys complaining now. But that was the whole point of it was, he's going to need rest days because he's not ready for as much ball as he's going to be asked to play. But yeah, he's outstanding in every way, shape, or form. And I'm fully on board with backing that up if they want to lock him up. And you're doing it at a position that's shortstop, which is hard. It's not like, Milwaukee getting Jackson Chourio. He's an outfielder. You find outfielders normally, right? There are special talents. Sure, I get that. But finding a shortstop to be that guy, that's not the easiest thing to do. And so Cardinals doing that would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, if you look at the prices of free agent shortstops, it's ridiculous. Like those $300 million guys, we don't have.
Wait till you see what Willie Adames makes this year.
Yeah, right.
Wait till you see that contract, boys and girls, and you're gonna be like, oh. And then you're gonna think like 10 years, $100 million for Masyn Winn. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, right. Let's do it right now. Do it.
All right. Speaking of young guys, the Rule 5 draft deadline to put people on your 40-man roster, that is today on this Tuesday the 19th, and we've got some names to keep an eye on, some guys that probably need to be added, but the Cardinals are working with only a few spots here, so we'll discuss who we think they should be saving from the Rule 5 draft. We'll do that next here on Locked On Cardinals. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You can bet $5. You win that bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel app is going to give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. I told you in yesterday's episode, I'll play it back for you if you need me to, but you got to trust me if you didn't watch it. I said, bet the house on everything Joe Mixon. I was like, you're going to want him in your lineup. You're going to want to put all the overs on Joe Mixon for last night's game against the Cowboys. And if you did it, you're a happy person today because it all worked out as the Texans ran all over the Dallas Cowboys last night. So I had a hunch that was going to work out. And if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you'll be able to check out the latest stats and view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you actually place your bets. They make it very easy for you. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started, once again, with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you again for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today. Be your second listen. I want you to go find Locked On MLB with my man Sully. Got an incredible blend of humor and baseball, and he's got stories. And the guy is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to everything baseball and just people in general. So if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you check him out. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thomas Gauvain from RedbirdRants.com joins us today. A year ago, the Cardinals made 3 additions to their 40-man roster. And I know some of this stuff is mundane and can be a little confusing for people, so I want to try to explain what goes on here as simple as I can. But you got a 40-man roster, and last year they ended up adding guys like Adam Klopfenstein, Sim Robertson, who were part of that Jordan Hicks trade. Pedro Pages was added to the 40-man roster. That came into play last year. It was kind of a big deal. Klopfenstein also ended up making the majors last year. So when a player is signed, I want to make sure I say this right. When a player is signed in 18 years or younger, you must have them added to a club's 40-man roster within 5 seasons. And players signed at 19 or older must be added within 4 seasons to be protected from the Rule 5 draft. If you guys remember, the Cardinals were able to take a guy by the name of Ryan Fernandez in the Rule 5 draft this past year, and he ended up paying huge dividends for the Cardinals and is probably going to be the guy that replaces Andrew Kittredge in the bullpen this year. That's probably the spot he's going to be. Now, as of Monday, the Cardinals had 36 of their 40-man roster signed and ready to go. Now, they can obviously adjust things if they need to, but right now they've got 36, which leaves you 4 spots, and there are plenty of names to go through here that probably deserve a spot, Thomas. So what are some of the names at the top of your list that should be added in your opinion?
Well, I think there's 48 eligible people who need to be picked. I don't know. My math could be off. I just kind of there's 2 big names, Tink Hence and Tekoah Roby. They'll definitely be added. We need to see what Roby has once he's fully healthy, and Tink Hence needs to continue his development. They're both good pitchers. They're solid. They could be. I think Roby could be a very good reliever. I think Tink Hence has the ability to be a middle of the rotation pitcher. Some of the other fringe guys that you might hear are Matt Koperniak. He's an outfielder. You can play all 3 positions, good offense, decent defense. He'd be a nice outfield depth out there. Andre Granillo is another pitcher.
Yeah.
Matt Swanson he has closer potential. He was in the minors. He had 27 saves last year, which was second most among all levels. I think it was the most for the level he played at. Those 4 are probably the biggest ones, or 5, sorry. Those 5 are probably the biggest ones. Are there any other guys that you have heard that you think might be a good idea to protect?
Ian Bedell is a guy that's
great guy.
I also like. We've had him on the show before, and he's just one of those guys that always intrigued me. Dealt with some injuries, and so there's not room for everybody, and I understand that. Some of these guys will not get claimed, but it's hard to argue with the guys that you mentioned already. You're talking bullpen guys, Granillo and Swanson. That's what they do, and you're talking about rebuilding a bullpen. I guess I shouldn't say rebuild, but you're dropping some names from this year's list. Like a Kittredge. You're not. Keenan Middleton was supposed to be a guy. He ended up being nothing because of the injury. But something we learned this year is that you can never have too many arms for the bullpen. And those guys, the guys that you mentioned with Swanson and Granillo, they're guys that are right there already. They are guys who could be on the major league roster. If there had been room last year, you might have seen them. So those are guys that I hate to lose somebody like that who's that close and has found success in the minor leagues as a relief pitcher and in closing situations for both of them. So if I have to choose between those guys, maybe Ian Bedell's the guy that ends up getting dropped from the list. Koperniak is somebody that feels like he deserves a shot to be.
He's like a Lane Thomas all over again,
right? That's what I'm saying. I was like, didn't we made mistakes with some of these guys before? He's a guy that he had huge numbers this year. What did he hit this year? It was like 309, 20 home runs, 28 doubles, career highs in on-base percentage and slugging percentage. Why would we cast aside a guy like that at 26 who's not making any money, doesn't need to be a starter? He sounds like a guy that would be a nice bench bat instead of, I enjoyed having Matt Carpenter around, but he'd be a nice bench back for somebody who, and he can play all 3 positions out there.
Yeah, pretty capably too. I think something about Swanson that's noteworthy. He really struggled with strikeouts last year. They sent him into the Arizona Fall League. I think that was one of the things he really worked on. He upped his rate greater than 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is nice. That's a good figure he needed to be at. So his Fall League showing might push him up into the next level. I don't know how much stock the team puts into 15 innings in Arizona over a month's time. We'll see.
Right. Well, Thomas Ajayci is the greatest hitter in baseball because of the AFL. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
He had some sick numbers there, which made us very happy.
Going against double-A pitchers.
Yeah, exactly. I know you can't get overly excited. I remember Connor Thomas was pitcher of the year in the AFL long ago, and what's he doing these days for the Cardinals? Not what we thought he was going to be doing, but it's interesting to see who. And again, there's no guarantee that just because they aren't on the 40-man that these guys are going to get drafted. So, but that's. If I'm gonna take a chance, unless there's something about these guys they don't like, and obviously Swanson getting selected to go to the AFL and work on things, the Cardinals are probably like, there's something there that we want to keep an eye on. So I don't think that's a certain guy that they would leave off the list. Hence and Roby obviously make perfect sense. Chandler Redmond is some guy that
didn't he hit 4 different? Was he the guy that hit the 4 different home runs in the same game?
Yeah. He plays first base and has pop and stuff like that. But again, you've only got Rube. Mike Antico was a guy that I've always liked because he's
another good guy too.
Blend of speed, some power as well, and was an outfielder, but it's tough, man, because there's only room for so many guys. So
there's the minor league portion of it too. Like just because we don't add all these guys, they can still come back on in the minor league Rule 5 draft or minor league contracts, even if we want to do that with them.
Well, if we had to pick just 4, say they don't make any adjustments and you only got the 4 spots, which 4 are you keeping? Hence, Roby are your top 2. Who's your other 2?
Probably Koperniak and Swanson.
Swanson, yeah. It's hard to argue with that, man. It really is. maybe swap out Granillo and Swanson, but it's hard to argue with those. But we'll find out. Deadline is today, and we'll see what happens. And hopefully it works out, and we're not unleashing somebody who ends up being a superstar for some other team here in the near future.
That's our track record, isn't it? Right? Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. Like, if you're other teams in the league, aren't you just like, all right, who are they leaving off? Because I'm taking all of them. One of them's going to end up leading us to an NL pennant or an AL pennant. It'd be amazing in the postseason. It's great. So, anyhow. All right. Well, what are some things that you're working on at redbirdrants.com in the near future that people can look forward to?
I had the piece about Brant Brown today. I've got one about the Masyn Winn contract extension. That's pretty much all I have on the docket for right now. I'm going to take it slow. It's holiday season. Let's do some family time, right?
It's smart. It is smart. It looks like I'm going to see A Christmas Carol this weekend. Great.
Enjoy it.
Anywho. All right. Well, check out all of Thomas's work at redbirdrants.com. And, of course, the entire staff at redbirdrants.com. They've got a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of great writers, Thomas being number 1 in our book. So thank you, as always, Thomas, for joining us here today. Give him a follow on Twitter X at Thomas Gauvain. And as always, man, we appreciate you stopping in and hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Enjoy your show.
Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen every day. If you haven't already, give us a follow on Twitter X as well at LO_Cardinals at a JD Sports Radio. Like, subscribe on YouTube, and help our channel and love for the St. Louis Cardinals grow. You guys are the best fans in baseball for a reason. We'll see you next time on Locked on Cardinals.